Freedom Street Garage, welcome back. My name is Alex. I'm here with Rich.
How are
and
you,
we're
sir?
here at I'm good. And we're here at Magnaflow in Oceanside, California with none other than the CT5-V Blackwing. Now, quick lesson. The Blackwing is a very limited numbers car, and the aftermarket for it is not very massive. Even though it has that LT4 under the hood shared with the Camaro ZL1, the aftermarket's just not that big. And even though the aftermarket isn't that big and not many people make parts for this car, Magnaflow has the capabilities to make anything. And we brought it here to see what they can do with it. All right, Rich, so now that we've got the car in the air, I'm already noticing some pretty big differences between the ZL1 and the Blackwing.
Yeah.
First off, I mean, one very similar portion is this muffler.
Correct.
They both have massive mufflers all the way at the back of the car.
Correct.
Very heavy. We weighed the other one on the Camaro.
Yes.
The difference of going from the stock Axleback to Magnaflow was significant.
Yes, it was.
And so the differences between this and what we're gonna put on the car, could you talk a little bit about that?
So the biggest thing that we're going to look at is where we're going to be able to improve performance and get the sound that we're looking for. The rear muffler does all the work. If you look forward, you'll see there's quite a bit of different things going on in here. And I think probably one of the biggest things you'll notice is that the Cadillac has no pinches or crushes.
No pinches, yeah.
So they try to optimize everything.
Which I am all about that. Like the ZL1, this tube right here crushed significantly. Like it was pretty smashed. And I asked you about it, you know, why did they do that? Why do they feel the need to crush the exhaust? Wouldn't you think that larger piping or fully, you know, tubular, like round piping would be better, but why do they do that?
So it's literally just about production friendliness. And of course, the Cadillac line is gonna get the best attention to detail. Whereas, hey, you know what? They have a manufacturing engineering standard that has a ground clearance issue. And they have to be very tight with that. Here, the axles might be a little different on the CT5, which if the CT5s are made for higher heat duration, it can be a little bit closer up there. And you will notice this does have a heat shield on it.
It does, right
instead of having the crush. So they went and took a different architecture to achieve the same goal, which is protecting the heat from the areas that are sensitive.
Okay.
Number two, you'll notice that this has something that a lot of people get a little bit unsettled by, which is it's got two crossovers and it's got both the Versus, X-pipe and H-pipe. And people are like, well, why are you doing both? And it's really just a matter of tuning. And that goes into the first statement we made when we brought the car in, is we want this to sound a particular way.
Yes.
So an H-pipe here is gonna have a different function in tuning sound pressure waves. And an X-pipe is gonna have a different function, and they're gonna work differently for both airflow, and they're gonna work differently for both sound pressure wave tuning. So the size and diameter still remains the factory 2 3/4 inch all the way through. We're gonna enhance that to 3 inch in the back, but we're gonna use what they've already done here because this is specific to this cabin, which is different from the Camaro.
Definitely, and like we just said, like there's some very clear differences just from looking directly under the car. Just seconds in, you notice a lot of differences. And so I think this upgrade's gonna be a pretty significant one.
Most of the work we do and all the magic is under the car, and really you only get to appreciate the tips, so.
Exactly.
We'll get to it.
Speaking of tips, this car comes factory with quad tips and they're square. Very factory look. Like you said earlier, it's kind of an AMG look.
Yep.
It's not an AMG.
No.
So what's the plan with the tips?
We're gonna go to a larger diameter. We're gonna go to one of our black chrome tips that you've seen some of our premium exhaust systems, and we're gonna go to a round. So that 4-inch tip is gonna be a little bit larger by about a 1/2 inch than the factory kind of octagon. I don't know what, not even octagon, it's rhombozoidal square.
Yeah, I felt weird calling it a square.
Yeah, and we're gonna do something that makes it stand out. So not only can you tell by the sound, but you're gonna tell by the look that we've done something to the exhaust system.
And on top of that, I mentioned this earlier, but the aftermarket for these cars, for the exhaust, it's not huge. You're either fully committing at the header, or there's just nothing out there. And so someone's gonna see that and they're instantly gonna know
something's up.
Yeah, something's up, and then they might even see the Magnaflow logo on the side of the tip, and they're really gonna know.
So I told you that we're gonna come over and take a look at first the tip. This is that black chrome tip that we talked about, and obviously there's a lot more to it than just being a tip. The aesthetics are very important, the finish is big. We want something that's gonna be super scratch resistant.
Oh yeah.
When we go to something that's not a painted tip or a coated tip, we get a more durable surface. And this is a black chrome, so it's always hard to see on camera, but it's got a little bit extra shine compared to what you would have in a painted product. And I think really when you're talking about the amount of carbon fiber on the car and the already black painted accents, we want something that's black also, but not exactly the same kind of black. And
exactly.
the other part too is going to a larger diameter tip. It's going to have a little bit more of what I like to call the racier effect.
Oh yeah.
The stock tips definitely blend into the fascia. They look right for the car, but they look stock.
They look so stock, yeah.
And we want to do something that'll kind of emphasize what's been done, and I'm going to put my logo on it, of course, and we'll figure out what looks right. You know, we may end up rolling it, so I got ones with and without the logos, but we may match the curvature, we might stagger them. We'll see what looks right for the vehicle.
And I think the black chrome with the like larger diameter tips and the slash cuts, I think that's just going to kill it.
It's aggressive.
Blackwing. Yeah.
We want it to be aggressive.
Yeah, it's almost like binoculars.
Yeah.
You know, people are just going to be driving behind you, seeing this, and man, if we get a flame tune-up, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. We're not doing that.
Well, speaking of tuning, that's the other part I wanted to talk about today, and I think this is something that the world of the consumers that are out there might have misconceptions about, which is, you know, we've got mufflers, and a lot of times people assume that what we put in the vehicle is the same thing that's in our universal muffler catalog, and we've got a multitude of mufflers. Maybe to the tune of about 350 different designs based upon sizes, inlet diameters, and most important part, internal structure. Now, that internal structure is something that is different in all these mufflers you see here. If you're familiar with our universal line, it's what you see in this particular product, which is it's got dual outlets or inlets, because this is a reversible muffler, and a single on the other side. So this one has one of our stamped Ys.
Okay.
And if you can imagine, it's got one large tube, a stamping of a Y, two smaller tubes. And that is very similar to what we run in our universal line. Now, this is a 4x9 versus a 5x8, and if you look at it, it looks like it's the same muffler squished a little bit.
It just looks like it's just squished a little, yeah.
And that's exactly what it is. These are all based upon a 7-inch round so that we can get that distinct sound. That's our Magnaflow sound. And we do this for clearance. So in the cases where we need more ground clearance, a lot of muscle cars where they put them right under the rear seats and you have very limited ground clearance, you're right where the speed bumps want to be, we give it a little bit more crush. It does affect a little bit of the tuning, as you can imagine. If you have a large diameter here, there's very little packing around the outside edge, but all the work is done in the middle. So it will have a little distinct difference in volume, but the actual tone is still based upon the 7-inch round device that it is.
Sweet.
Now this one, while you say might be the same thing, oh, it must have a stamping, you'll see this one's even a little bit more different. So it's got what we call a V-core.
Oh, wow.
And you'll see that it doesn't have a stamped internal. It actually keeps consistent smaller diameter for high velocity. So you have a small inlet and you have a V, which looks just like a collector on a header.
It looks like a collector on a header, seriously. It's honestly, if you look at it from this direction, it just looks like it goes straight through almost. But then you look at it from this direction and then it merges into one. That's actually really cool. And this is the first time I've ever seen a muffler like that. At least, maybe I've been in the presence of one, but this is the first time I've seen inside one that has that style.
If you notice, this doesn't have the inlet and outlet that's traditional on most of our universal line. And that's simply because this is not a universal muffler. And in most of the kits that we have, we're actually designing the kits so that they make sounds based upon the engine and chassis that they're hooked up to. So while it might look like our universal muffler, what's inside the muffler is actually distinctly been made by our engineers for that vehicle. Insofar that there's even yet another variation. And this one almost looks like, wait a minute, it's got two complete inlets or outlets. Like I said, our mufflers are reversible because you only see one on that side. But if you look very closely down the inside of this one, you can see there's an open chamber.
I can see it.
And when we talk about chamber, you can tell each one of these has a different tone because of the amount of packing. This is actually a completely chambered, but what we call our perforated straight through design, but with no additional packing. So this will give you more of that hollow, tinty noise you get from a chambered muffler, but you get that great straight through flow of a perforated core.
Sweet. I'm noticing this one is also polished versus these other two, which are more of a brush finish. Oh, satin finish, gotcha. I mean, I like the polished look. What's the reason for the difference in that on these two different types? Is it just a styling
what
thing?
You said is a styling thing.
When
certain cars, if it's a blacked out car like this, do you really want something bright and shiny on the bottom?
Good point.
Is it overstated? Do we want something that's gonna basically deflect that reflection and light? Or do we want something that really lets you know I got an aftermarket exhaust? And it really depends if we're using a polished tip or the vehicle has accents that are not all black, in this case, carbon fiber. It makes more sense to have something a little bit more muted, hence the polished to the satin finish.
See, thinking of the things that I would have never thought of, So Rich, I gotta know, I'm dying to know, now that I know about all three of these mufflers, which one is going on the Blackwing?
I wish I could tell you, but that's what our engineers are gonna find out.
Oh, okay, good stuff. All right, well, we're gonna find out together, guys. And we know what each muffler does, and these are our three options for the Blackwing. So let's see what they cook up in here.
So Alex, now that you've seen what we put into it overnight, we've got one last test, and that's everything's on the car. We gotta hand you the keys, and you're gonna have to tell me if we hit the mark for you.
My favorite part. So let's get the Cadillac on the ground, and of course I've been dying to hear it. I see what you guys put into it. It looks beautiful off the car. It's kind of a shame that it's gonna all get hidden, but I am dying to hear what this thing sounds like. So yeah, let's drop it off the ramps and get some sound clips. Thank you very much. I just got the keys back to the Blackwing, and it's got its new exhaust from Magnaflow. Mind you guys, there's no exhaust on the market for the CT5-V Blackwing, and Magnaflow did us a solid by making one for this car. And it's based on their Mustang exhaust, the Mustang X mod system, but it's very custom and specific for this car. And if you want your chance to win this car, all you gotta do is tap the link below. Shop now at freedomstreetgarage.com, buy a pair of socks, a hoodie, a beanie, any of it's gonna get you entered to win this thing. Our last winner bought an iPhone cable and won a ZL1 1LE. You could be next.